very loosely translated. I don't like the translation. In the English books, you find it translated as the golden womb. It is not just the golden womb, it is golden because of the opportunities that are being created. See, when we create something, when we want to do something, don't we have a flow chart in our mind? Those who cannot handle a flow chart in the mind, at least put it on their smartphones, PDA, or on a paper. Things to do list, tasks to finish, you list them out. And each task, how are you trying to handle it? How are you trying to make sure that you will be successful in accomplishing it? You have a flow chart. That state, with respect to this entire creation, wherein it is not yet created, but it has been visualized, is called Hiranyagarbha. That Paramatma is not just in the Avyakta, but in the Vyakta, in the expressful format, he is the Hiranyagarbha. Therefore, the mantra in the Upanishads, in the Vedas, they say that Hiranyagarbha samavartatagre bhutasya jatah patireka asit. In the Nasadiya Sukta it comes that before this entire creation came about, that Paramatma as a creator becomes the Hiranyagarbha as well. From that, this whole creation expresses. That is called Jagadadijaha. So, Bhrajišnur Bhojanam Bhokta Sahishnur Jagadadijaha Hiranyagarbha Rupena Jagat Utpadyate Swayam Iti Jagadadijaha. The one who expresses himself as the Jagat in the form of Hiranyagarbha, therefore called Jagadadijaha. Anagha. Anagho Vijayo Jeta. Anagha. What does Anagha mean? Agham na vidyate asya iti anagha. Apahata papma iti shrutehe. The one who does not have agham. Agham, sin. Anagha, anagha, the one who does not have sin. Now, what does sin mean? Sin means to not exist in a state of equilibrium in itself is sin. There was this kid that I met in Minneapolis. He was doing a project in chemistry and he wanted to share his revelation. He said that in the chemical chart, what do you call it? Periodic table. Thank you. In the periodic table, the last row is called the noble elements. Neon, xenon, and all those. Forgot? Okay. It was a reminder, pressure. So that noble elements are the most stable one. They don't react. They don't jump around. They are the most stable elements. Why? Because they are in the most natural state. Those elements which are in that row, in that column, in that row, in that column is the noble elements. Those which are in that row, they are so unstable because of their either an extra electron or a less of an electron. That extra or less of an electron itself is a negativity. And he put it so beautifully. He said, wow, you understood Vedanta well. Because electrons are, what is their charge? Negative charge. And because of that negative charge, they are constantly in a restless environment. And they are trying to acquire to the closest noble status. That status wherein the elements don't react, they only respond. Even the nature is trying to teach us, get back to that balance. As long as these negativities exist, means that incompleteness exists, that incompleteness itself is a sin. Based off of that incompleteness, then we draw lines of morality, ethics and other things and say, if you can manage to do this much, then it is called papa, or if you don't manage to do it, it is called papa, and if you manage to do it, it is called punya. It's just a luxury that we are, playing around with. But in true sense, not being in that balanced state, acquiring the other dharma and trying to live as something that which we are not, and profoundly profess that which we are not as something that which is, in itself is called sin. That which is and we recognize not, that which is not, we not only just recognize it but also thrive living as it, is called sin. The primordial sin, in layman's terms. Too much of technicality there. In layman's terms, what does it mean? What is it that exists but we recognize not? Is the self-illuming Paramatma. What is it that exists not but we live as and thrive as? Ego. Right? That in itself, that existence as an ego in itself is an aberration in existence. And now tell me, trying to live like a good ego or a bad ego, does it make any sense? Ego itself is bad. Among that, within that ego, trying to classify the ego as good or bad, does it make any sense? Does it make any logical approach to it? Therefore, the difference of the Western philosophy and Eastern philosophy is very distinct and clear. The Western philosophy focuses on identifying this ego, pumping it up, bloat it, glamorize it from all angles, and create the worthiness of that ego. If you read the self-help counter in that aisle, all the books, they talk about engaging this ego and making it positive. Ego in itself is the biggest negativity. What are you trying to make it a positive? It will be a frustrating effort. Therefore, the Eastern philosophers have always gone beyond, and they found that the very existence of ego in itself is the cause of all restlessness. For oneself as well as for people around. When is the most peaceful time? Good. Sleep is the most peaceful time. As one mother introduced her child, she said, Swamiji, he is the sweetest kid as long as he is in that state. He's sleeping. Once he wakes up, he is a mini tornado. That everything has to be either broken or broken by. Nothing can remain in its, he is constantly that, hyper and agitated. The only peaceful time is when he is sleeping. The only adorable, cute time is when he is sleeping. Even for us, when do we find that peace? When we are asleep. For ourselves as well as for the rest of the world. Do you know why? Because the ego has withdrawn. What is realization? While staying awake, to withdraw that ego, annihilate that ego, consciously, awarefully, if that process be learnt, that day is truthfully the most celebrated moment in that individual's life. That here is called anagaha, the one who exists without the ego. Because the very basis of our papa is the existence of ego. And then we try to say, I am not that bad. The one who is claiming it, the very claimer, is a sinful entity. Now what are we trying to glorify it? That is why they say, when they talk about saints, that it was not a person, it was not a personality, it was very Paramatma expressing. There is no more ego, layer of ego there. Anagha. Agha means ego. Anagha, absence of ego. So all of us are realized when we are asleep. Because there is no ego, right? All of us are with Paramatma. When? All of us are with God when we are asleep. I made this statement once in a Balavihar camp, in our own Labor Day camp here in Dallas. All the parents, at least 15-20 of them came back. I don't know what you taught to the kids in the camp. They don't want to go to school, they don't want to get up out of the bed, they want to continuously sleep. It is the misunderstood or wrongly implemented knowledge. So I told them, if I have taught them that, I can also teach you how to break that. If and when they get up and ask for food and other things, and they leave their time wherein they'll get thirsty and they'll get hungry, when they come, you tell them that those who are with God, they don't feel hunger and thirst. They don't talk about food and water. If you are talking about it, then you are not yet there. To reach to that state, while we are awake and alert, while we are awake and available, is the spiritual unfoldment. So let us not make the spiritual effort as another feather in the cap of the ego to claim that now I am becoming sattvic. I am better than the rest of them, holier than thou, is the highest state of stupidity. If it is the ego again proclaiming it, anagha, egoless state. And that in true sense is called vijayaha. That is the true success, true victory. The rest of them are accomplishments. What is the true, whenever there is a team which wins, what does it follow? It follows with a celebration. Is there anybody after a victory goes, sits down in one corner and says, no, I just won? When you win, you want to go out there and celebrate that moment of victory. So Vijayaha is that moment of victory, that moment of celebration in one's life, when that asura Asura. Which Asura? The ego has been not just put to sleep, but thoroughly annihilated. Now the question that we have to ask ourselves, do we have the courage to annihilate that by which we live as? You may behave egoistically, you may not behave egoistically, but still there is an ego. Do we have the courage to blast that ego? Again, whose ego are we talking about? Not your children's ego, not your spouse's ego. One's own ego. That is why Mundaka Shruti says that this Paramatma is attained by that one who has courage as the prime quality. Courage to walk this path. If today I were to announce that today evening we would have, say, Lakshmi Puja. Ashta Aishwarya Siddhyartam Lakshmi Puja. This hall would have not been sufficient. We would have to take the next hall. There will be that many people. But to work on ego, because it requires that kind of maturity, that kind of courage, that kind of commitment, yes, but more than a commitment is that kind of willpower to work at it meticulously, to annihilate it at all levels. That in true sense is called Vijay. Is a victory of that life, that individual. Anagaha Vijayaha. Jeta. That in true sense is called true success. What is the purpose of life? To have success and happiness. But if we focus only on success, because it is not guaranteed that the one who is successful ends up being happy. Can you guarantee that? The one who is successful, can you guarantee happiness? And the one who is happy need not be considered successful. But the life's purpose is to find both, to be successfully happy and to be happily successful. Jeta, the true success in life. Now as a seeker, as the first step in their life, after having heard all this knowledge, after having gone through the entire processing of this knowledge which is acquired through various sources, knowledge acquired through education, and that is another big flaw, because in today's world education is not meant for knowledge. A generation has gone by, and now this present generation thinks that it firmly believes now that education